wonderful. Thank you so very, very much. Music, you know, hearing that voice of Mahalia and the expertise and the love of music that you bring to what you do. And I think that's the purpose, really, and the whole idea about overcoming every obstacle. I had a Facebook comment from someone who had attended the Westlake Church when I was the minister. And they commented to my topic today. They said, Dr. Sue, you never talked about obstacles. You only talked about the perfection and wholeness of God. What's going on? I went, look around you. Doesn't take too much. So I think we have to adapt and adjust and acknowledge what is. And then from that point on, we bring the perfection up to the surface, bringing that to the forefront of our mind and our hearts. Don't let trouble on your mind. Yeah, I agree. And in your heart, too. So there's a story about a gentleman. You could call him, I guess today, a traveling salesman, but this goes back many, many centuries ago into India. And so he traveled from village to village with his horse. And of course, the weather kept getting hotter and hotter in the middle of summer. And so finally he came to a place where there was a Persian wheel, which of course is a very noisy device, but it draws the water up from the well. And he thought, oh, this is wonderful. My horse can drink and we can be about the business and I can do my selling on the next pit stop. So he stops and he asks the peasant running the farm, would it be okay if my horse drank from that well? And the peasant, of course, absolutely. But the horse shied away because of the extremity of the noise. And so the traveling salesman said, could you do something? My horse won't drink. There's just too much noise and static going on here. It's a total distraction. So the peasant said, fine. It turned off the wheel and, of course, no water. And so the traveling gentleman said, well, what's going on? My horse needs water. And so the peasant very calmly and very wisely said, well, if your horse wants water, he'll have to get used to the idea that there's water and there is noise that goes with it. So, yeah, deep is the well. Yeah. So the point being that water, which, you know, metaphysically, that is the term for the subjective, that underwater current of representation of all that's possible, the infinite possibilities that we don't yet see out here, but it's germinating, it's gestating inside. That's the water of life that feeds us. And yet when we look outside, yeah, there's noise, there's struggle, there's difficulties, there's challenges in our personal world and in, of course, everything that we see happening in the world today. And it was a wonderful point that Reverend Pam made about Martin Luther King, and that really every huge movement that has brought change to our world has been behind it a religious momentum. Martin Luther King, the abolitionists were Quakers. And all through history, if you look at the backdrop, you'll see there was a spiritual impetus. There was something that in the midst of all turmoil and uncertainty and fear, proclaimed the indwelling presence has in and of itself all of life, all of goodness, all of restoration and regeneration. We all need movement, so I moved to the other side of the room. And so with that idea that where is the noise in your world? Where is the noise in my world today? And there's plenty of it. And I would venture to say that anyone who is not affected by what is going on outwardly, adding to whatever we're going through in terms of our own difficulty in relationships or in our maturing population and discovering what comes with the quote-unquote aging process. What is that doing and how is it affecting my life? In fact, am I allowing that to inhibit what the world needs now, which truly is the love contribution and the wisdom and the energy to do something new? there's a statement that Holmes makes very often in one way or another. And he says that life, the divine life force, doesn't need anything outside of it except in order to exist. And the moment we recognize that force is an ultimate reality and the divine possibility for all of us, the minute we recognize that presence and power, life is precipitated. It causes something different to happen in the outside world. And if that's the case, then indeed, I need to, you need to, more than ever before, uncover the perfection that is in the midst of everything that's happening. I was thinking about the three predominant great teachers, about Moses, and how he and Buddha and the Christ, Jesus, made such an impact, and yet all of it came about by first of all acknowledging what the Buddha said. Life is suffering. There is difficulty, there are obstacles, there are challenges. And that being part of the Four Noble Truths that he offered by saying, yes, life is difficult and there is a way out. Because why we find life difficult is because we become very attached humanly to our own cravings, our own need for personal satisfaction and fulfillment, and everything in our outer world that we seem to egoically perceive as existing for our fulfillment. And so the way out is to give up the attachment, and the way to do that, of course, is through the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, which insists upon adhering to the principles of right-mindedness and right thought and right intention, right resolve, right livelihood. There's the work that you do in the world, whether you're in the marketplace or you're volunteering and serving, which is a necessity. It's an imperative these days. Is that in harmony with the Buddha nature, the nature of the perfection, which God is, I am, all are? And that ultimate meditation, so that we personally experience union, conscious union with the divine. Because whether we know it or believe it or not, it's there. This certain something is the catalyst for the blink of an eye, the movement of a hand. It's the thinker behind the thought. It's the being, its existence, its life pulsating through and by means of us. And so to acknowledge that is to get a handle on life, so that when all of the occurrences that are presently going on in the world, and it's almost the human expectation that each day is like, what now? You know, there's a hesitancy in even putting on the news. I don't want to even know anymore. I need to remain as undistracted and as unwaveringly focused and tethered to that truth within. So here's Moses, you know, he's a guy who's living his life as he knows it, where he is, and suddenly out of a burning bush comes a voice that says, you're going to free your people from Egypt. That's your mission, kiddo. That's exactly the way it said. If you read the Bible, it says that. It does. And so he has his excuses. He says, but I stutter. I can't do that. And of course, God says, not to worry. You've got your brother. Your brother's a perfect spokesperson. And off he goes, and indeed accomplishes that feat. It reminds me a great deal about Joseph. Well, it's actually an original mono myth about the hero's journey. And of course, Joseph Campbell brought it very much into focus. And if you read his book, The Hero of a Thousand Faces, he has the 12 stages of the hero's journey. Well, we see it, we feel it, we're in it. And so with the journey, taking license and just summarizing it, which Moses personified in the story of Exodus, it's the fact that we're living our lives as we know them. You do what you do, I do what I do, but suddenly something happens, whether close up and personal in your own world or further out in the world that we live in humanly. And suddenly that which was the norm is overshadowed by an impulse. There's a call a call of the wild, so to speak, a call for an adventure that somehow transcends that which we know and exist as our living human reality. And so we give in to that call. When the heroic urge is there, yes, we have obstacles along the way. Moses had, or excuses or rationalization. Moses had his stutter. We all have our little yeah but. Anybody yeah but? Yeah, we but it all over the place. And so that's the norm. That's the understanding of how spiritual process, really spiritual alchemy, unfolds. It's the same as turning that gross metal into gold. We're turning the parts of us that really the only obstacles that ever exist are our own unbridled consciousness, our own wild and crazy continuous thinking at the level of getting and unhappiness if things don't go our way. And so whatever that excuse is, somewhere along the path, we find the reassurance. In modern times, we find a spiritual community. We find a magnificent, fearless leader who takes us to that reminding place. And the idea is not just to let it happen on a Sunday or through a class, but to let that retain itself and sustain itself in our awareness, so that when we leave here, it's almost as if we come together at spiritual gatherings, and the consciousness where two or more are gathered, it's not that the growing is done by the divine, it's done by our awareness of the existence and the reality of the divine. And yet the minute we walk through that door, back into our cars, back in the parking lot, back to wherever we go, it's as if, where did it go? Oh my God, I've got to do this. And look what's happening now. We turn on the news and, oh, for God's sake. Well, if it's for God's sake, then know it and be it. Because nobody is going to do anything for us. You know the statement that Holmes said, God works for us by working through us. So how is that working for you, as Dr. Phil used to say? What's working through you that isn't all about you? That suddenly it transcends you and overrides all of the excuses about stuttering in our own interpretation of what that is, and all the reasons I'll do it when the kids get older. The kids are older now, I guarantee. They're older. They're old enough. And I look at my son, my oldest son, with his totally gray hair. And I go, why do you? I don't have gray hair. What's up with you? Do something, Doug. He's gorgeous. All my kids are. But it's a marvel. It's a marvel to have come this far and to think, oh my God, where did this all emerge from? You can point to it in your own life, wherever you currently are. You can bet, and I know it's a far cry from where you were, or perhaps even from where you thought you would be. That's the marvel of that power of life that is precipitated in a new way the moment we give it a new thought, the moment we bring the thought of the divine, the infinite, the eternal, the universal. Again, what's in the name? The name of the thing is the nature of a thing. So I think truly the basis for all that happens in our world is a statement of how we feel about ourselves and who we claim ourselves as being. Do I really feel, think, sense, I'm enthused and energetic and uplifted by the idea that I am of divine stuff. You are of divine stuff. There is only divine stuff. Now, are we all utilizing it more and more and more? Not necessarily. So how can we use it more and more so that it becomes not our second nature, but our primary nature? So, reverting again back to history and the myth and the stories that have a message behind them. What happens next with Moses? He goes, he frees the people, but not before those 10 plagues. Again, all of the obstacles on the path, and yet overriding them, transcending them, and using that power of life, of truth, of mind, of love, that really does change everything. I was watching, because I am just so drawn to the idea these ideas are being offered so profoundly by Marianne Williamson. So the night of the Democratic debates, she had her own thing going in LA. And she was on fire, just offering again the ideas that talking about slavery and talking about injustice and talking about cruelty and war and violence and prejudice and talking of which the Spanish church issued a proclamation, an article was in the Times, stating that mindfulness and meditation were a threat. That seriously, this is in Spain. Because apparently, wonderful people like Richard Rohr, if you're familiar with his works, he brings a deep love, an abiding love for Christianity, and yet with the interpretation of the universal cosmology that goes along with it, that we are one with that which we see in the cosmos, in the universe, and of course this is now being declaimed as absolute fallacy. And so to know that there is still that sense of otherness, that there is not a universal sense of oneness, that as Holmes said, and many teachers have said, Buddha said it, the Upanishad said it, God in man as man is man. That's as much of God as we see is in the face that we bring to every place we go. I was in Erewhon. Anybody ever shop in Erewhon? And there was a gal demonstrating a non-dairy ice cream. And she was standing, with her little table off in a corner. And I walked by and I said to her, "Are you getting any traffic?" And she says, "No." I said, "Well, do you say anything?" So she said, "No, not really. I just count on people walking by and then they'll stop at my table." I said, "You can't count on people, places, and things." It's like, "Oh no, please, let's keep it calm." So I said, "Well, what if you took a picture of me eating the ice cream?" And at least that would stimulate, and people would say, "Well, what is she doing?" Or will attract. She said, "Well, that's a really nice idea, thank you." So she takes a picture of me with a little spoon, having my little sample. And I said, "Cheerio." I didn't say cheerio. I went higher than that. I said, "God is, I am. Catch you later." Every situation is ripe for offering an opportunity to rise and shine in the awareness, in the conscious awareness that right where I am, life precipitates itself at a higher level because I am the hero on the journey of showing, demonstrating my divinity in very practical, pragmatic ways that serve the divine within me by helping all humanity be the people that we are created to be. And so Moses then, the journey continued after the people were free. He wasn't the one to lead them to the land of milk and honey, interestingly enough. He took it just so far, but also brought the law. So where Jesus offered already the basis for that, by saying 4 noble truths, there's an answer to the suffering of the world, to the obstructions that you'll find, they're all within yourself. Dissolve them and you dissolve what you think you need from the world, and you'll find the self-sufficiency of God right where you are. And so the 10 Commandments, if you look at the 10 Commandments, the first 5 are really all about how to stimulate that cause within yourself that is identified as the divine. Because if I know who I am, I can't kill, I can't rob, I can't savor anybody else's goodies. I'm satisfied in knowing I already have everything I could ever need. I came in fully equipped. My opportunity is to keep knowing that and discovering that and utilizing it. There's nothing new under the sun. So whether it's the Eightfold Path, the 4 Noble Truths that give me an understanding that in life there will be challenges. I defy anyone in this room to tell me you've never had any personal challenges. So there you have it. And yet, why are they there? They are there to disclose the opportunity to use a golden mind and have a golden life emerge out of it. It may not be what you expected or what I expected, but if our one primary motivation is to extract the opportunity to grow from that and to be the hero who then continues the journey, finding a mentor or something that keeps reminding the hero and the heroine of their opportunity to rise above every condition and realize and discover more of the truth of the inner self, then the journey continues. And then just as the gift is given, the gift is an awakened thought, a deep realization that, the other part of that statement, when deep calls unto deep, deep answers. So it's like the small d, I'm first the seeker. And what I find is the big D, the big deep essence, that pool, that wellspring of life itself. The other part of that statement is when deep calls unto deep, deep responds because there is a simultaneous agreement, which means when I'm calling that higher self, instantaneously there's recognition because it's always there. It's always here, right where I am. And the key to everything that is truly an uplifted, transcendent life that brings gifts to everyone, whether it's in a marketplace, in a grocery store, to the people that we visit every day in banks and every place that we go. We're always in touch with people. What if we became the conscious bearers of the gospel, of the good news, that there is something within that regardless of you telling me your story and the biggest story of where history currently is, there is an answer, there is a solution. There is that which God is, I am, all are. And then the Christ, the trio, the Holy Trinity. And not to disallow for Muhammad the beautiful teaching that fundamentally he did bring to Islam. And so the Christ came, I don't come to destroy the law that Moses brought and the Buddha before him. I've come to fulfill it. And love is the fulfillment of the law. So we have teachers galore from history and from today. And yet, when it all boils down, the only teacher there ever is the inner teacher. So why not realize, remember that little comic that Walt Kelly used to have, Pogo, and it said, we had met the enemy and it is us. So let's heal, let's make friends with the enemies we know exist within ourselves, the anger, the justification for holding grudges, the fear, the loneliness, the anxieties, the apprehension about living in uncertain times. Life is uncertainly certain when you know who you are. And again, that reminder from Holmes, life, it does not look outside of itself for anything. It depends completely upon its inner being. And the minute you and I do the same, recognizing life, God, truth, spirit, whatever again you call it, is higher and greater than we are, and yet it is what we are. And it precipitates itself and becomes more of itself as you are, as I am. And that's the way it really is. Okay. So now we have an opportunity.
No.
What?
We have another
Oh,
opportunity.
good. Oh, good. Bring the angels.
Yes,
up.
yes, we have another opportunity.
Oh, fabulous. Can I sing with you? No, just kidding.
You can sing along on the chorus. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. When we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side you also may be. Keep on sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It'll help us every day. It will brighten our way if we keep on the sunny side of life. The storm in its fury broke today, crushing hopes that we cherished so dear. Clouds and storms will in time pass away. The sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It'll help us every day, it will brighten our way if we keep on the sunny side of life. Let us greet with a song of hope each day. Though the moment be cloudy or fair, let us trust in our love every way. It'll keep us everyone in its care. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten our way if we keep on the sunny side of life. If we keep on the sunny side of life.
Thank you so much. So I have a question. Do you like live music?
Yes.
Okay. So here's an opportunity to contribute. Why not start a music fund, a separate fund that allows for live music every week? I mean, the way to think ahead of yourself is to always look at everything from what would the divine say as a greater idea? And there's always one available. So here's one right now. It's giving time. And so, you know, when you really think of a quote-unquote religious or spiritual service, it's primarily can be a very passive experience, but not now. Now it comes to the point where there's an activity that's generated, and ideally that activity and that energy is the impulse to give beyond what you've ever given, to have something exceed the boundaries of same old. And so for that reason, if you're reading this and you see it every week, it's like the scripture said, it becomes like praying without ceasing, which doesn't get anybody anywhere. It's just, again, the same old. So why not see it like, oh my God, this is the first time I've ever seen that. What a fabulous idea. And I know I'm giving more today. I'm adding lots of zeros to whatever I've got on that check. Wow. I'm excited. So together with that excitement and that first time let's say together, divine love blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is, and that's the way it is.